Hello there. Welcome to Behind the Scenes recording of AV Rant. What is this, episode 595? Yeah, we are behind the scenes. That's why you're seeing a green screen that way next to me. There might be video dropouts. We're just using Google Hangouts. There might be audio glitches, and you might not be able to see the images that we are referencing. So if you would like all that stuff, especially the audio cleaned up, look for the complete 2-hour video version that I will usually post on Wednesdays. That's what we're usually doing. So yeah, I'll switch over to Tom. He can start whenever he's ready. Yeah.
Whenever I'm ready, huh? Mm-hmm. They put the numbers in weird places. I don't quite understand how this numbering system works on this program. 1 minute, 14 seconds. Okay. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. For those of you tuning in live, welcome back to another Tuesday at, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And that's probably going to be our normal time going forward. That's working out for us. So,
yeah, no, I've never really liked recording at night. I like recording during the day. It's a little bit easier for me in general, and I think everybody. But now that I have no set schedule because I work from home on my new business, which is still waiting on the stupid wall to show up, which is supposed to show up.
We've never shown the wall on the thing. That this is just an example. This isn't actually Tom's wall, but there's an example.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. So we'll be. We're hoping for that this weekend, but since this is just going to work out better, I this morning went to the. I'm trying to start running. I hate running, but I'm trying to start running. So I was running. I've run a couple of times, and the last time I ran, like my left calf just like went right, and then like got like this. I could feel the Charlie horse go like from the bottom all the way to the top. I could feel the muscles start to knot, and I was like, ugh. So my wife has got a friend who's a physio, and I went over to see her today, and she hates me. Expressed it in a lot of her internal rage on my muscle in my left calf, which was feeling so good that I couldn't remember which calf I had hurt. Believe me, I remember now. Holy crap, dude. I am limping so bad. But yeah, so that'll feel better tomorrow. It's for today, it is not so good. And I think, did we talk about my son last week who was sick?
We talked about your son who was sick for a week last week.
And we talked. He had mono.
Yes.
And then on top of the mono, he got a sinus infection, which is why he was sick for like a week and a half.
There you go. Yeah.
And after a week and a half, like 4 days later, my wife's like, yeah, he's okay to go to camp for a week. I'm like, no, he's not. She's like, yeah, he is. I'm like, no, he really isn't. Why don't you ask your friends? All of his friends said, no, he's not. So where is he? He's at camp for a week.
Okay.
Up in North Georgia, which is like 10-hour round. It's a one-way drive if something happens, but he'll be fine. Luckily, just so I didn't forget how much fun it was to have a sick son, my younger son got sick yesterday, Sunday night, and was throwing up all night and this Monday morning. And so it's been that kind of summer.
More than one. That's why you have more than one kid. So it never ends. The cycle never ends.
The cycle never ends. That's right. It's a circle of life. So I call it the circle of pain and all that. All right. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. YouTube.com/AVRant. If you want to contact us directly, you can hit us up at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. And if you are looking for a Twitter account to just let you know when the podcast goes live, follow me because I don't post anything else on Twitter at this moment. And that is unlikely to change.
Or whenever else WordPress decides that this is our first blog post ever, hello world, which happened.
Well, I think that was a test by the hacker. So we got hacked.
Right.
It wasn't us. It was technically Dina got hacked. So somehow they figured out Dina's password and then hacked into AVRant and then posted a whole bunch of gambling site things and that auto pushed over to Facebook, which is how we figured it out.
It did.
Because they had actually buried some of those posts pretty deep into so that you could
alter the date of posting thing. Yeah.
So when they all showed up on Facebook all at the same time, I was like, So we found them all, deleted them all, changed all the passwords. I called Dina to tell her that I had changed her password for her and had taken her off of the ability to post anything on the website ever again.
And she was like, "What was AV Rant?"
Yeah, she did not respond. So I assume she's off traveling with her husband someplace, which is what she told me she was going to do. So sorry for those of you that aren't into sports betting and did not want to hear about it multiple times from the AV Rant podcast. But hey, we fixed it. So we do want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. This takes you to a PayPal donation site, which you can use your PayPal account or a credit card. So we want to thank Josh for going over there and doing that. Thank you very much, Josh.
Yeah, Josh, thank you very much for the support via donation.
That's right. Josh is those monies will go into our coffers to help pay for things that we need,
mostly hosting and bandwidth.
And
that's what podcasts cost.
Yes. We also want to thank our patrons over at Patreon. Patreon.com is a service where you can sign up to have a monthly donation given from you to us, sort of like those continuous supporting monthly thing. So it's a minimum of $1, maximum of infinity. So we want to thank our 61 patrons over at Patreon.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. And thanks so much to our 61 patrons.
We also want to thank everyone who let us know that we had been hacked, and there was a bunch of you guys.
There was a lot of names, so I knew I was going to miss at least a handful of people. So everyone who alerted us, thank you. We appreciate that very much because it needed to be fixed.
Let me tell you how I fixed that. My kids are, because my boys are 14 and the older ones are 14 and 12, and the 14-year-old has been doing this for a while, and the 12-year-old is starting to do it. But they go in the bathroom and hide and do whatever 14 and 12-year-old boys do in the bathroom. You guys figure that out for yourself. And so they're like, every once in a while, they're like, Daddy was in the bathroom for a long time too. Well, Daddy's in the bathroom for a long time for other reasons other than the reasons that you guys are in the bathroom for. So I came out of the I got the hacking news as I was in the bathroom on my phone. So I took my computer in there, and I was standing there. I was waiting to take a shower. So I was standing there fixing the website, deleting all the posts off Facebook, buck naked. Wait, just trying to get the shower.
That image, yay!
Just trying to take a shower. All I want to do is take a shower. So I came out of the bathroom. I was like, you know what I was doing in the bathroom? I was fixing our hack. Next time you're in the bathroom for an hour, you better be
doing
de-hacking,
support,
de-hacking a website. That's a good parenting tip of the day. We also want to thank Josh, who is this is a different Josh, who says he's been spreading the gospel of AV Rant all over Reddit. Because you remember last week there was a Redditor who came over here, and we were like, we're on Reddit. Josh apparently is our Reddit person.
We'll just assume that all future messages coming from Reddit are from Josh. Thanks, Josh.
Josh is Reddit guy. He's going to be our Redditor. Redditor? I don't know what that
Reddit
is.
ambassador.
That's right. RA. He's our RA.
Okay.
Reddit ambassador.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. We also want to thank Chris, who will give an Istion hub to anybody that we say, and we just have to figure out a way to pick one.
Okay.
I'm
leaving all that to you, so I'm ignoring it.
Seconds to think about, like, this podcast is over. I'm going to completely forget about this again.
That's right.
I got so many other things going on, so I will try to come up with a way. If you would very much like an Istion hub, I think you should let me know how it is that you should want to win it, because I would.
Okay.
I don't know. Just email.
I mean, we should just say email in, get a cutoff date, randomly select somebody. That's got to be the easiest way, right?
Yeah. So if you would like an Insteon hub, what do they do? Insteon hubs. What do they do, Rob?
Oh, it's so it's a smart home thing. It's for home automation. Yeah. Works with Insteon products, but it can also branch out to other things. I believe there's a way to make it work with Z-Wave. I'm pretty sure, because almost everything has a way of working with Z-Wave somehow. Right. But yeah, the idea is you program it to send out commands at scheduled times or in response to a given input, various Insteon products. So you can have smart lighting, you can have electrical switches that you can power on and off, dimmer switches, garage door openers, leak sensors, all kinds of stuff. There's a huge array of things that Insteon can do, and then can usually branch out to other type of smart home products too. So yeah, this is the hub that will sit on your network to control all the stuff.
Okay. If you have a use for that or a desire to play with one, and you can send us an email, tell us why, and I will randomly select somebody.
Okay.
Somehow at the end of June.
End of June. Okay, so we're cutting this off What,
may or
June
may not be
30th?
here at the beginning of July because we are going to Puerto Rico over
Okay.
the July 4th weekend. So it will be somewhere in July that we will award the winner, and then the winner will not have to write a review, but will have to tell us something about their opinions of the Insteon Hub.
Okay, well, let's just say the timestamp on your email has to reach us by June 30th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. There, let's get super specific, because that way it'll show up. If the date says June 30th or earlier on Tom's email, then that'll work, right? So. Who are they emailing? Just question at AVRant.com?
No, yeah,
no, don't do that.
Whatever.
Well, that could be a lot of emails, but whatever.
Just send it to me. Just send it to Tom at AVRant.com.
We shouldn't do this on the fly. This is horribly disorganized.
No, it's fine. It's Tom at AVRant.com.
Okay.
By the end of June, give me an email and I'll pick one in July. That's easy.
Okay, see, there we'll figure it out. See, now if you've only emailed question, we'll be like, aha, you didn't listen, because we told you to email Tom at AVRant.com if it's for the Insteon Hub giveaway. There. Right. Follow the instructions.
I'm looking at my email. Haven't got one yet. Okay, good. All right. So what are we doing now in the news?
Yes.
Yes, in the news. Last week, Sony's X700 Ultra HD Blu-ray player got its Dolby firmware update. I never got a thing telling me to update it, but whatever. Huh. This week, Oppo's 203 and 205 got a new beta firmware updates that add support for sending Dolby Vision to Sony TVs. Mm-hmm. There's also a new option that lets you convert everything to a Dolby Vision output signal if you would like to.
Which Sony forces you to do on the X700, so at least it is an option on the Oppo players. Right. This is a beta firmware, so it will not be pushed to your player over the network. You will have to look for it, being a beta firmware. But yeah, there you go. That is the first third-party Ultra HD Blu-ray players that have been updated to work with Sony's TVs. Nice to see that Oppo is, in fact, continuing support. They said they would, and this is evidence that they are doing what they said they would do.
Do you think that this will ever come out of beta, or is it just going to be beta forever?
Their previous firmwares have come out of beta, so
I know, but their previous firmwares came out when they were still
selling things. Yeah, I don't know, but so far it seems to work. And if anyone's wondering, like, why the heck would you want to put everything in Dolby Vision? One reason it would be if you have one of the Vizio Reference Series TVs. They only ever made Reference Series TVs for 1 year, but those did Dolby Vision, but they did not do HDR10.
Weird.
Which is like the only TV I know of that was that way. But for those specific people who have Vizio Reference Series TVs, they're like, yay, now I can turn HDR10 into Dolby Vision. So there you go.
Yeah. Amazon announced their $120 Fire TV Cube. I didn't even know this was a thing. It's basically a 4K HDR Fire TV device with an Echo built in, plus an IR blaster. So you can use it like you use an Echo, but then it also streams video just like a Fire TV, and it can control some of your home theater components via HDMI C and IR. So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
I mean, it's a thing that makes sense. Lots of people have connected Echo dots and use them to voice control streaming devices. So they're like, well, we make a streaming device. Let's just build it all into one little cube.
Yeah. 120 is not that bad. Yeah. A few weeks ago, Chad asked about flat speaker wire. Rob suggested either Parts Express or Axiom. Well, Axiom's overpriced but extremely flat speaker wire isn't listed on their website anymore. But there's a better option anyway. Apparently, Sewell Ghost Wire is just as flat as Axiom used to sell, but only costs about $1 a foot. So that's what 16 gauge, 2 conductor, 100
it
foot,
is.
All that stuff.
And it's like one solid piece of copper foil. It comes in both a 2 conductor version and a 4 conductor version, in case you want to do that. And in case anyone's looking at that and going, how do I put that into my speakers? Well, you actually have a little terminal block that you just screw onto the ends, and then that attaches to a short amount of regular speaker wire that you would then plug into your speakers. But it is very, very flat, and if you want it to be nigh invisible, you can actually put like a small amount of wall plaster over it and then prime and paint, and it'll, because you're just feathering in that joint, just like, between 2 pieces of drywall, you have that little seam.
Right.
It's like, it's no more than that, so you could actually make this nigh invisible.
Okay. Lee wanted to warn that PC 2000 cylinder subs make for terrible speaker stands, he says. Since they come with the squishy sound path isolation feet already installed, they move quite a bit. Anything placed on top of them tends to vibrate off. I did not consider that. Can't you take the sound isolation feet off? You can. They just unscrew from the bottom. Yeah. I mean, you could use just a fair amount of something like blue tack on top to stick what you're if you're using it as a speaker stand. I did not consider that, to be honest with you, because those feet are kind of squishy.
Oh yeah.
I don't have mine are the older cylinders, so they don't have
Right.
they have the grate on top. I don't tend to put anything on top of them.
Yeah, you had the 12 NSDs, right? The PC
Right, the
12
12
NSDs, the
yeah.
predecessors.
But they do have the sound path isolation feet, but
Yep.
I don't know. I've never experienced anything vibrating off of mine, but he has. So there you go.
Yes. Yep.
It's a good point. Michael, last week we talked about the news story posted by Audioholics detailing Dolby's new mandate that third-party upmixers can no longer be applied to Dolby signals, only the Dolby surround upmixer. Is that Audioholics post? Gene speculated that current and older models might have this restriction applied via a firmware update, but Michael had someone check directly with Sound United, which is I guess Dan and Marantz.
Yeah, that's the parent company. They also own like Polk and a few other companies as well. They're all under one big umbrella now.
Sold Macintosh. They have Macintosh as well. He asked a representative at a recent dealer conference. That rep insisted that the mandate only applies to future models going forward. Current and older models won't have the cross-formatting upmixing taken away by future firmware updates, so they say. That being said, somebody made the mistake of contacting me about 25th anniversary of Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Let me see. What does it say? Just interested in checking out and receiving the Jurassic Park 25th Anniversary Collection box set 4K Ultra HD with DTS:X sound for review. I said yes, and then they said okay, they're going to send it to me. So I should be.
I ordered one.
I should be getting that sometime this week, and you and I will talk about our opinions of the sound and
we'll
picture
both have it. Yeah.
Next week. I am only watching the first one. I am not watching.
There's no way I'm watching all four of those. There's no chance of that happening.
I actually don't hate the second and third one. I don't hate them. I like the second one before they get to San Diego. And then it just gets silly. And the third one, it seems awfully short. But it was okay. The fourth one, which one's the fourth one?
Jurassic World.
Oh, yeah, that one was real dumb. All right. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about that. And I don't believe this for a second, to be honest with you. In fact, representatives are probably the last people that get information from the people who are making the decisions because they don't want them to spill any beans.
Right.
So I would not. I'm not saying that he's not right. He could very well be right, but I don't think that he's any more right than I am.
And honestly, we just don't know. We'll see how. I mean, for all we know, Dolby could send out an addendum that says, "Oh yeah, this is also going to apply to all previous models," and that wasn't the case in the first thing they sent out, and then they could update. Who knows what's going to happen? So
we'll see. Roger wrote back with a helpful link for anyone who wants to read more about oversampling and low-pass filtering. He's an engineer, so he can't help but want to share complete and accurate information whenever we're discussing a topic he knows very well, and we weren't quite hitting all the facts with our previous quick descriptions. Yeah, that's going to happen.
Yep.
I just want to throw this out there. There's only so much detail. Like when we do deep dives, it's never going to be deep enough for some people. And that's okay, because we need you guys out there too to have all this information and be able to understand. Because when you explain it to us and then we translate it into English, there is some loss in that translation. But
for sure.
Thank you for it. But
yes.
He's also a fairly new listener to the podcast. He's amazed at the wealth of useful information we provide. So we'd like to help anyone who is interested when it comes to his area of expertise. So there is going to be a link to an oversampling, because this is what we're talking about. That oversampling thing that we just kind of I got completely wrong. And then Rob corrected me. Apparently Rob wasn't right enough either.
Well, that's right. No, I left out a lot of details. And so I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, it's not the most complex thing, but it is more complex than we are going to delve into, because it's a lot of time that we would dedicate to something that isn't answering like other questions that that we sort of want to get to on the podcast. But this link is super duper helpful because it gives the pertinent information. So if this is something that you want to have all the facts, we're going to have the link avrant.com in the show notes, and there you go.
All right, Nathan and Jay both noticed a mention about new monoprice monolith 9 and 11 channel amplifier models. Somewhat humorously, they were spotted amidst the huge list of excluded products for a recent coupon offer as opposed to any sort of official announcement. Nathan chatted with monoprice customer service rep who found both SKUs in the computer system and said their tentative availability date is shown as June 30th, although that might just be a placeholder. So there's going to be more amps that you will be able to buy for a brief period of time and then wonder what happened to them.
Well, it's nice to see. So they have their 3-channel, 5-channel, and 7-channel models that now have XLR inputs, which was something that some people wanted. The original versions of the monolith amps only had RCA inputs. Now they have XLR. So those are back in stock. They are available. That's nice to see. I wasn't fully expecting 9 and 11 channel versions because up to this point, ATI, who are the original electronic manufacturers behind these monolith amps, they haven't put out 9 and 11 channel versions of their own ATI branded amps, but they are certainly capable of engineering and making them. So there you go. That's going to be cool for those people doing Atmos. 9 and 11 channel versions of the monoliths look like they are a thing that will show up at some point.
And something that almost nobody needs. But let's go on. Chad. Chad is the fellow who has the original M&K S150 speakers who was considering mounting his surround back speakers up high on his ceiling soffits. All right, here we go. And we've got a picture of this guy's room. He's got like a line drawing thingy. It's kind of nice. He's planning on putting both subs up front. It looks like 3 front speakers. I can't tell. Is that 3 surrounds or was that surround? Oh, one's supposed to be the surround and one's supposed to be the front height and the other one's supposed to be the...
He penciled in his proposed placement. So he's got these 2 soffits that are up high on either side of where he'll be sitting. And he was like, I could put one that's basically going to be directly beside my seats. Those could be surrounds. One that's back of that could be surround backs. And he's like, I could also throw up some front height speakers. That's potentially a thing that could be done. Yeah.
So Rob mentioned how Dave Fabricant over at Sandy used to work for M&K, so he gave him a call. Dave was indeed very familiar with the M&K speakers, and after their conversation, Chad has decided to go with the Send HTM200 SE speakers for all of his surround and future overhead positions. Chad plans to take Tom's advice. And start with just 5.2. Oh, that's a good idea. 5.2 to get used to his new room and how it sounds with the surround speakers up high. But he does hope to eventually end up with 7.2.4. Okay. He looked at he looked at Dolby's diagram. He's trying to work out the best plan of attack in terms of placement and wiring. Keep in mind that what he plans to do is start with surround speakers up high on his soffits, then add surround backs down to get them closer to ear level, and at which point he can use those soffit position as overhead Atmos speakers. Should he just wire where he wants his surround and surround backs and then later repurpose those positions as top, middles, and rear heights? Is that even doable? Or should he wire for ideal Dolby Atmos positions at 45 degrees in front, 45 degrees behind? That would be an easy switch from surround backs up high, repurpose to top rears, but the 45 degrees in front would be too far forward for surrounds, right? That is correct. So maybe wire for 6 speakers in the soffits. He'd only use 4, but he'd have options. What should he do? Well, wiring everything, every possible option actually doesn't cost that much. I mean, speaker wire is pretty cheap,
already up there and pulling the wires in those soffits, wiring for 6 positions instead of only 4 makes a heck of a lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
do it all at once.
I would wire for all of them. Everything that you're thinking that you might use, I'd wire for that. And then if you don't use it, you don't use it. I mean, I've done that. Yeah. In fact, not only that, I have mounted speakers and taken the speakers down and just put, blank covers over the holes and just push the wire back in the wall.
Yeah.
So
and what he's proposed there makes a lot of sense to me because those who knows, maybe you end up getting one of the 13 channel models from Denon and Marantz,
and you could use all 3.
And then you could use all 3. You could have 6 overhead speakers. So wiring for those 6 positions and what he has proposed look like very reasonable positions to me. I think that makes all the sense.
So he's got amplifiers for his front 3 MK speakers, but he'll need to amplify his new surround and surround back speakers to start with. He'll eventually need to amplify his overhead speakers as well. For the time being, he's using his existing 7.1 Pre-Pro, so it seems like it would make sense to stick with separates the whole way through and wind up with Atmos Pre-Pro for all external amplification. But what amp? Okay, first of all, I don't agree with that statement. I don't think that you have to stay with Pre-Pro just because you've got 3 amps right now.
Right.
And even if
what he needs is 7 amps.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Wait,
in total, he does. Because, I mean, yeah, he's going to continue using his 7.1 pre-pro.
Yeah, but he's only using 5. He's going 5.2 to start with. So he only needs 2 amps. He's got 3, right?
But then he's going to add the surround backs, he said, and he'll probably end up doing that, like, probably immediately.
Yeah, so. Okay, now if that's the case, that's fine. But if that's not the case, then you only need 2 channels of amplification. And honestly, for the price of an amp, you can buy a new receiver.
Oh yeah,
and why spend the money for an amplifier when you could buy the receiver, and then you got a pre-pro you don't need anymore, and suddenly you can now do 7 or 9 channels right out the box without adding anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So the argument would be, so he definitely needs a 2-channel amp. That's fine. Or
yes, if he wants to stick with his pre-pro, that's what he needs.
So let's focus on that. So he'll get the 2-channel amp. He'll set up a 5.2 system to begin. He already has the 2 subwoofers. So he'll set up a 5.2 system. You get used to that, and then instead of expanding from 5.2 to 7.2, maybe just go, it's time to go to Atmos, right away. So you get the AV receiver that can do 11 speakers, or maybe the one that can do 13. And then I'm all in favor of continuing to use at least the front 3, maybe the 5 external amps that you have, and then powering the other 6 speakers with the AV receiver. That is probably the most cost-effective way to attack this problem.
Well, the most cost-effective is just to buy the receiver now.
Buy the receiver right now.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. If we suggested getting like 4 or 5 channels of amplification, that almost does cover the cost of just getting the receiver right this second.
That's if you get cheap amps. I mean, he's looking at the Emotiva. So okay, let me finish reading the question here. But what amp should he get? He could buy just an 8-channel Emotiva A800 for $500 right now. That is a receiver, by the way, and have all 11 channels amplification.
Well, not a receiver that can do 11 speakers. $500, no.
But then he still has to buy the pre-pro. The A800 is only 30 watts per channel, so is that a concern? Maybe he could get one Emotiva A500 for now, and then add a second one later. What's the best plan of attack? But the best plan of attack, like I said, is depend. If you're thinking that you're going to buy 5 to 8 channels right now, you might as well just save your money and get a receiver.
Just get the receiver.
Get the receiver. If you are just going to do 5.2 for the time being, and that time being is longer than like a couple of months, then okay, fine. Buy a 2-channel amp and buy a 2-channel amp that is like the audio source, the cheapest.
The audio source amp 100, yep.
Yeah, the cheapest thing that you can get your hands on, because these speakers are going to be awfully close to you. They're not going to be hard to drive, and they're going to be awfully close to you. So they don't take. You're not going to be putting any power into them anyways. So then there you want to go ahead and get a receiver, and after that, instead of buying a new pre-pro that can do 11 channels or 13 channels or 15 channels whenever you get around to it, you just get a receiver, and then whatever you don't have amps for, you use the internal amps of the receiver, which all the Atmos channels, even the audio source could power them. The receiver any receiver that you could possibly think of buying could power them. The surround channels, same. The front channels, also probably the same. But you've got the amps already, so you might as well use them. That's what I would do. Yeah,
the more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe you just buy a Denon X4400H right now. I will say it's getting pretty hard to find the 4300.
Right.
So the 4400 now, definitely available, definitely under $1,000. So if you're already looking at like a $600 amp that won't get you all the way to where you want to end up, it kind of makes sense to spend like $900 to get an X4400 and you're done. I would absolutely recommend using the 3 amplifiers that you have to power your M&K speakers.
Sure.
I would for sure recommend that, but that's no problem. Done and done.
Yeah. I would not buy another. I would go receiver.
We went from how do I get to 11 amps to don't buy any amps. That has become our answer.
That's right. I think in the long run, we're going to save you a lot of money.
Yeah, that is actually a lot of money saved in the long run.
You will. I mean, just in amplifier power, just amplifier amount of money you would spend on amplifiers, you're going to save money getting a receiver. But that's not even factoring. That's not even factoring in the pre-pro, which would cost a bajillion more dollars than the receiver. And chances are, you'll end up with a receiver as your pre-pro because you'll get all the features of the pre-pro that you wanted. But
at a lower price. Yeah.
So why not just use those channels? Joseph has a computer they would like to use to play back 4K HDR movies with full lossless audio. This is such a Rob question. It's a little bit older now, a Sandy Bridge i3 CPU with an NVIDIA GTX 1050 graphics card, but according to all the specs, it should be just fine for 4K HDR video playback. He has a separate Unraid?
Unraid, yeah.
What's an Unraid?
I believe that's the software, one of the software solutions.
All right, he has a separate Unraid server that is running Plex. His receiver is a Yamaha RX-A 3050, which says it can pass through full 4K 60 444 with HDCP 2.2, and his TV is an LG B7 OLED that he bought recently. First, he tried using the built-in Plex app on the B7 OLED. The HDR logo did light up when he played a backup of the UHD Blu-ray from his Unraid Plex servers, but there was no way to get lossless audio. That makes sense.
Yes.
So he plugged his computer into his Yamaha and then the Yamaha into his TV. But when he sent his graphics card to output 4K, it was choppy and stuttering. So what does he need to do here? Does he need a CPU and a motherboard upgrade? He doubts he needs a graphics card upgrade. But what will give him smooth 4K HDR video with full lossless audio using Plex to play Ultra HD Blu-ray Black-Ups? I don't know. I don't have a single clue at all. None.
So yeah, this is a little bit confusing because I do agree with you. The hardware that you have, especially that GTX 1050. Now, if you were looking to do 4K resolution games at the highest settings or whatever, no, it's going to struggle with that. But that's not what this PC is for. This is for content playback, and it absolutely should be able to handle 4K HDR video output. While that CPU is a little bit older and not the most powerful, it doesn't have to do much when it's doing the video. The graphics card is handling the vast majority of the processing that's needed. So your computer hardware ought to be just fine. Everything else in your signal chain is just fine. So I'll start with maybe the most promising thing, which is in your B7 OLED. When you want to connect it to a computer graphics card that's outputting full 4K and 10-bit and all the stuff, you actually do want to hit the inputs button on the remote. This is on your television's remote, your B7 OLED's remote. Hit the inputs and go to the all inputs that comes up. And whatever HDMI input you're using that's connected to your Yamaha and your Yamaha is connected to your computer, you want to change its icon to the PC icon.
I think we've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah, but it's not super obvious by any means. That is the way to activate the full 444 signal coming in, because your computer is just sending out RGB. It's sending out the full fat RGB signal in 10-bit. And probably your television, the HDMI input needs to be set to the PC mode. And the way you do that is what I described. Inputs, all inputs, find your HDMI input and switch its icon to PC. And now it's in PC mode.
Fix the problem right there.
That's promising if that wasn't already done. The other thing is Plex on your computer does have automatic frame rate switching. That's within the Plex media player.
Okay.
And it's within the settings for that, and it does have automatic frame rate switching. I have found on my own PC that it tends to stutter pretty bad when that's activated, which is unfortunate because one of the things you want is 24 frames per second playback, so that you eliminate all the judder. I found just leaving it at 60 hertz gives me the smoothest playback, but of course then you get the 24 hertz being converted to 60 hertz. You get that judder.
Rigid pull down should be okay though.
Yeah, but without it, I have found it kind of choppy when the computer's sending out 24 hertz. The NVIDIA graphics card have a weird thing where video is not actually 24 frames per second. It's 23.976 if we're getting super specific. And the NVIDIA graphics card for a long time they got better. At first, they were only putting out actual 24, which meant that every 8 minutes or so you would get, whatever it was, some fairly small amount of time, you would get a stutter because it was not actually the correct frame rate. It was genuine 24 coming out. They updated it, but they updated it to 23.97. Not 23.976. It's very close, but it means that every several minutes, there's like one frame out of sync. So it's these are silly problems that happen with computers. If you want my real answer, because if you try all this and it doesn't work, and I'm not sure why it wouldn't, but if it just doesn't, or you're just like, I gotta have 24 frames per second playback properly, my real answer is to get an NVIDIA Shield, because it's under, what is it, $180 right now, I think.
Right.
The NVIDIA Shields are. If you upgraded your graphics card or your CPU and motherboard, you're probably going to spend that much or more.
Right.
And the NVIDIA Shield works like a dream as far as playing back on Plex. So that's my real answer to you, is to get an NVIDIA Shield.
So what disk drive would you recommend for making Ultra HD Blu-ray backups? Isn't there only one? I thought there was only one.
No, there's several, but some of them have had issues. So the one that I got and has been working very well, and the one that everyone online says works very well, is from Asus. And the exact model number is the BW16D1HT. It is an internal drive.
Okay.
And one of the issues is some people bought what they thought was just the external version of it that you can plug in via USB. It don't work. The external one doesn't work.
Why would the external one not work?
I don't know.
That doesn't
But
make
it
sense.
doesn't. For whatever reason, the external version... So it's that specific, a BW16D1HT. It is an internal drive. If you don't have an internal slot, you can just buy an external case to turn it into an external drive itself. But that's the one you want. It's like $90. You can find it at Newegg. And do not, under any circumstances, update its firmware. Take it out of the box, install it. If Windows says, I don't know how to work with this, don't worry. MakeMKV still does. So do not update the firmware on that drive, or else you will not be able to back up Ultra HD Blu-rays.
Okay. That's dumb too.
It is. And could explain a lot of people's problems.
So can you factory reset it and get rid of the updates?
I'm not sure. I've just made sure never to. Some people have posted on the MakeMKV forums. They're like, here's the old firmware if you ever need to roll it back.
Oh, if you ever roll it back. Okay.
It has been posted.
Okay. Mark has a pair of SVS SB2000 subs. These are the sealed box 2000 versions. One in the front left corner and the other in the rear right corner. His room is 15 by 15, but there's an extra 5 by 5 space towards the rear left of the room. So it isn't the perfect square. He's got a receiver with Odyssey sub EQ HT. So he just let that do its thing, and he's been mostly happy with the bass. Mostly. But could it be better? Answer is probably...
Someone is an AV Rant listener.
He got a calibrated measurement mic from Cross Spectrum Labs, and he's played around a bit with a Room EQ Wizard. If he were to get the mini DSP, are there things he could do with that setup that he cannot accomplish with Odyssey Sub EQ HT? How can he determine what could be further improved in his bass, and then how could he go about doing that? And will a mini DSP be necessary? Well, the answer to your last question is having Room EQ Wizard and the mic will tell you where your problems lie, but will not help you solve them unless you can make adjustments to Odyssey directly, which you can if you have the Odyssey Pro version, which nobody does, or you have a new enough receiver where you can use the app.
Right. Yeah. But the one thing, so what you can do with what you have right now, because he's got Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 with the sub EQ HT. So the things you can do there is you can set independent gain levels for the two subs, and you can set independent distances, which is the same as a delay. You can set independent delays for your two subs, but you can't give each sub its own unique EQ settings. Right. It will just sum them together and EQ them in mono, which is what we want to do as the very final thing that you do in this whole thing is EQ them in mono. But it can't do individual EQ, which is something that the whole multi-sub where would have you do. Right. So that is the one thing that you would need a mini DSP for, is if you want to do unique EQ for each sub prior to then EQing them in mono as a complete system. So
the real question here that I think we would have is, what does your measurements look like now?
Yeah. Because you've already got the mic.
Yeah.
And Room EQ Wizard is free. So before you go spending any money on a mini DSP, let's see if you can get to near ideal results without spending any more money, because it's very likely.
The other thing is too, if we look at your results and your results are like, these look pretty good.
Right. Yeah.
In which case you're like, can things get better? Our answer is yes, but you probably won't be able to tell the difference that well. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've sat on every seat in my couch, and I've never sat. I used to have such bass blowouts in different locations of my room before I got dual subs that in Odyssey. sub EQ, that it was insane. Now, not in this room because I've pretty much had dual subs since I've been in this house, but in my other houses, in the other places that I've lived, I've had non-optimal rooms and single subs or dual subs, but openings and stuff like that. And it's always been really, really inconsistent. This is, without me looking at the measurements, I'm like, however much better it can get, I'm probably not going to be able to notice it. And you may be in the same boat. Now, having that little 5x5 space in the back, to me, isn't really that much of an issue. It could be, but you could also just,
Well, it's actually probably better than the room just being a perfect square.
I was going to say the same thing. It's 15 by 15, and you don't want this. We're going to talk about measurements later in this podcast. But,
we are.
You don't really want a perfect square, anyways. So having that little, it's almost like a little bass trap back there. Honestly, to bounce around back there, it would be a good place to put a bunch of absorption if you had any leftover lying.
Yeah. So I mean, the main thing you want to do is, first of all, leave your system as is. Don't touch it just yet. Play some. So Room EQ Wizard can let you play some test tones through your AV receiver, so that Odyssey and Sub EQ HT are all active while the test tones are playing. And what you want to do is measure in multiple positions. If you have a couch, measure in all 3 seats across the couch. Maybe even measure a little bit in front and a little bit behind the couch, a little bit up, a little bit down. Take a bunch of measurements all around your couch area. And then you're going to look at the graphs that are generated from all of those. And what you're hoping to see is that they all look about the same, that they all kind of overlap with each other, because we're hoping to find uniformity. That's the main thing that we want. Now, if you don't have uniformity, if you're seeing that one seat is going up in a certain frequency range and in that exact same frequency range, another seat right beside it or on the other side of the couch is going down when the first seat was going up, that's something we want to try to address. But you might not need unique EQ for each subwoofer to do that. You might be able to do that just with the gain and delay settings that you already have access to. So it's a lot of trial and error. This is why a lot of people don't want to get into it, because it can be a lot of time and a lot of trial and error. And every time you make a change, you have to remeasure to just see what just happened. Yeah.
To get a good baseline, I would do my 3 seats with Odyssey off. Okay. I do my 3 seats with Odyssey on.
Okay.
And then compare. Now you know what Odyssey has done.
Yes.
Not what Odyssey says it's doing when you look at the screen, which is the curve it's applying, but what it actually sounds like at those 3 seats. So I would not move the measurement microphone. I would take the microphone, I would put it in the seat, I would turn Odyssey off, I would take a measurement, I turn Odyssey back on, take a measurement, move the mic, do that 3 times.
Okay.
Then get an idea from that. Okay. Well, clearly in my room with my sub placements and that, this is, if all 3 lines are going up in the same, even if they're not going up the same degree, but if they're going up-ish and then downish all around the same time, well, then you've got uniform bass response, which is good. Okay. Then if you see Odyssey has corrected that, then Odyssey has done its job.
Yeah.
Now, if you have non-uniform bass response, some of the peaks are going up, some of the peaks are going down, but with the pre-Odyssey measurement, that's where we can start looking at whether or not we need to adjust delays and stuff.
And before we get into adding a mini DSP, it could be done with the settings you already have. It could also be done with, sometimes you don't have to move the sub a lot, but a little bit of physically moving the sub a little bit can make differences too. So
that was the second thing I would do is, after you take these measurements, if you really find that there's something wrong and it's not to your liking, the first thing I would do is just change the location of the subs by 6 inches, a foot, something like that, just to see how much of a difference that made. And if you're not seeing much difference, well, then move it again until you can't move it anymore. And you say, oh, this is much play. These are all the locations I can put it. This is as much I can do. And then once you find the best one, then rerun Odyssey, then do the whole thing again. So,
okay.
Does that pretty much answer that whole question? It does, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Just Jay heard us talking quite highly about Chad's original M&K S150 speakers, but back when M&K was going out of business, which was a long time ago, he recalls that they were selling off a lot of parts, and didn't we make some comment about how cheap a lot of those parts were and how M&K wasn't actually very good? Can we clear up our position? And this is all swirling on his head because he's wondering if he should pursue a deal on a set of used S150 fronts and S150 tripole surround speakers.
Gotcha.
I don't remember that conversation.
So I might be misremembering, but I for sure remember the subwoofers. I made that comment.
Could be.
Because the subwoofers that M&K used to sell were expensive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that they weren't very good. It's that for the price they were charging, right. I was like, you can get way better subs for a lot less money than what they were selling the subwoofers for. I don't believe I made the same comment about their speakers, though, because that hasn't really been the case. I always thought they were a little bit expensive. But it was certainly I do think highly of the S150 speakers. So I for sure made that comment about the subs because I'm like, the subs were way overpriced.
Right. That sounds like something we would have said.
Yeah, and when we did see the component, like the drivers they were using were nothing special at all.
No.
And yet they were charging like $3,000 for it. It was nuts. It was way out of line. So I'm pretty sure it was about the subs that I was talking about.
Could be. And honestly, I've never heard the M&K speaker. So I just know that M&K were the speakers that were used in the Skywalker Ranch labs or whatever, like that. So it's very hard for me to imagine me saying that they weren't good speakers with A, me not having heard them, and B, their lineage. So if you are looking at the 150 fronts and the 150 tripole surround speakers, I would have no problem saying go for the fronts for sure. Now, the tripole surround speakers, because of Atmos, I'm less inclined for you to purchase those. And the reason being is that we have moved away from this more diffuse sound. We now are doing that with Atmos and everything else. So we want more direct firing speakers. That being said, I have bipole speakers as my surrounds, so sure. I'm not changing them. If somebody wants to send me a different speaker, I'll put it up there, but I'm not going to go buy more speakers. But if this is a really good deal, I would, and they were a package, I'd be like, yeah, go for it.
Right. I would simply say whatever the price is that you might be paying for these 3 or 5 speakers, compare it to what the price would be to get some Ascend Acoustics SE series speakers.
Okay.
Because it might be considerably cheaper than brand new Ascend Acoustic speakers, in which case, yeah, go for it. But it might be the same or more, in which case I'd be like, I'd probably just get the modern day Ascends.
Right.
That would be my choice.
That's
there.
A good thing. Jay confirmed that while Odyssey Dynamic EQ boosts the levels of his bass and his surround channels, it does not boost the levels of the Atmos speakers. Could that be the reason why Tom has not been terribly impressed with Atmos? Would it maybe be a good idea to manually boost the Atmos trim levels to make them more noticeable? Yeah, I have considered that. And Dynamic EQ doesn't really touch the higher registers anyway, as it just does the lower stuff. It just does the bass. So
mostly, yeah. But it definitely does boost the surrounds if you have the volume knob turned way down.
Right. I listen to all different volumes in here. The problem, I attribute many of these problems to the Xbox One. I got to be honest with you. The Xbox One and its settings are just stupid. But when you're watching,
once it's bit streaming out, though, that it's not its fault anymore.
Yeah. Once you're doing movies, you're fine. But
yeah,
everything else, when you're streaming like Netflix and it's clear, the sound is clearly only coming from the center channel. You're like, and it says Atmos on the receiver. You're like,
So now I can't upmix it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Ruined it for everybody. So yeah, I have considered doing that. And what I really want to do is I want to recalibrate in here. I just want to run the Odyssey a couple more, another time. I haven't done it in a while. Things have kind of changed a little bit here and there, and I just like to run it again and make sure that the microphone is perfectly in line with everybody, with all the different speakers and stuff like that. I just like to try it one more time, but I have not. The other thing is I can't remember is after because the speakers were angled, the Atmos speakers were angled down a little, kind of angled a little bit, and then I decided to push them straight up so they're firing straight down. Okay. And I can't remember if I ran Odyssey before or after I made that change. So that could also be factoring in here. But there you go.
Sure. But a lot of it is you haven't listened to a ton of Atmos movies.
Well, yet. I'm hoping the CTSX one, that the Jurassic Park when it comes in, is going to blow my mind. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a mind-blowing experience. I'm probably going to watch the first one and the last one. Because I'll watch the last one because the kids will want to watch it. And they've seen it, but they'll want to see it again. So Jay has a Marantz AV7702 Mark II Pre-Pro.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
I was wrong. I'm sorry.
And
was scrolling around.
Emotiva Basox A700 amp. He connected the 12-volt trigger so that the amp turns on and off at the same time as the Pre-Pro, but the Pre-Pro takes a bit longer to power up than the amp, so there's a pop from his speakers when the Pre-Pro kicks on. Is there a simple way to adjust the delay so the Pre-Pro is powered on, it waits a few seconds to fully power up, and then it sends the 12-volt trigger, or a device that could go between the Pre-Pro's 12-volt output and the amp's 12-volt input, so that would add a delay? I would imagine that is the case. That is a device. I don't know.
This is way harder to do than it should be.
Well, okay. First of all, can you turn the amp on with a remote?
No.
Okay, so you can't. Well,
it has a hard power button. You could walk up there. You could send your kid up there to turn it on.
There's but what about like a Harmony? Could a Harmony use a 12-volt trigger out to make this thing go?
Nope. Well, I mean, if you had a remote controllable 12-volt trigger, but try to find one of those.
Yeah. Really? Just I feel like this shouldn't be that hard.
I know it shouldn't be, but search around. There's lots of people on forums asking a similar question. Everyone's like, so first of all, somebody over on the Emotiva Lounge made their own, like literally bought the parts and made their own. I'll have the link to that build if you want to take it on. It is a solution. It could do this, but like he's literally just buying circuit boards and programming it to do what he wants it to do, which is crazy. Ridiculous. But the method that I found that I think is, I mean, this is something anybody could do. It's still kind of a ridiculous workaround, but Emotiva, they sell a little separate 12-volt trigger box. It's actually to like take one trigger in and expand it to 3 triggers out, because they're an amplifier company and they're like, what if you only have one trigger? How do you multiply that? So it's a little $40 box, which is kind of a lot of money for that, but it's not way outlandish. The thing is, this wouldn't solve your problem all by itself, because it would still have the trigger output coming from the Marantz, which unfortunately you can't just program inside the Marantz to have a delay. It's like, nope, when I turn on, I send out the 12-volt trigger. That's all I can do. That's
pretty standard, though.
It is pretty standard.
I don't know that I've ever had a receiver that way.
It would be kind of useful if that were, say, how hard could it be to add that setting? But
it doesn't seem like it would be that hard.
It doesn't seem like anybody does it, so this wouldn't solve the problem all by itself. But what you can do, and Emotiva like explicitly talks about this because they know this is a problem. They're like, what you can do is set it so that when this box receives power from the wall outlet, it will send out its 12-volt trigger. So you do not connect this little $40 Emotiva box to your Marantz at all. It doesn't touch the Marantz. Okay. It only connects its output to your amplifier, and then you plug it into a remote controllable wall switch, which you can get for like $10 from Amazon. They have, it's a little outlet that plugs into a regular outlet, but it comes with a little remote.
Yeah.
And you can turn that little electrical wall outlet on and off. Now that's all you need to do. It's a super janky workaround.
So it's $50 basically to do this.
$50.
So
I mean, the parts for the thing the guy put together was like $65, so this still ends up being cheaper than that.
Okay, so the other option is to stand up and walk across the room and press the button.
There is that. Yeah, that is your other option. But if you want to do this, you can do it. Kind of a janky workaround, but yeah. And some people were like, well, can't you just plug the amplifier itself into a remote controllable electrical outlet? Right, you leave its power switch in the hard on position,
right,
and then you just turn the outlet on and off. But most of those remote controllable outlets only let through 10 amps.
Oh yeah, that's probably
out of 15, and I wouldn't do that with a power amplifier.
Yeah,
right?
You're asking for trouble.
Yeah, so yeah, there you go. It's one way to do it. It's silly, but it'll work. I mean, using the smart, the remote controllable electrical outlet to send a 12-volt trigger, I have no worries about that. That's taking no power. So
yeah. All right, Terry. Terry has a TCL P Series TV with Dolby Vision. His receiver is Onkyo TX NR1009, which does not support HDCP 2.2 or HDR 1009.
It's going back a little ways.
That's a little old, yeah. And he uses an Apple 4K, Apple TV 4K. So in order to retain Dolby Vision, he plugs the Apple TV 4K directly into his TV, then uses HDMI, ARC, or audio return channel, to send audio back to the receiver. He also has his receiver connected via Zone 2 to a pair of speakers on the patio. And Terry would like to be able to hear the sound from the Apple TV 4K out on the patio. That doesn't work the way things are connected now, since there's no way to send an ARC signal to Zone 2. That is true.
That is true.
I would imagine with this receiver, you would probably need to, it's only going to take an analog to Zone 2, I would guess.
No. It can send any of the digital sources, but only if it originates as a stereo signal, as a 2-channel stereo signal. Okay. And there's no way to send ARC to Zone 2. It's not available as a source for Zone 2.
So Terry was thinking about using an HDMI splitter, but that would cause video problems, correct?
Yeah, just a straight splitter, because it'll see the Onkyo as well as the TV, and it'll be like lowest common denominator.
So what if you use an HDMI splitter, but instead of plugging the second HDMI output into his Onkyo, he plugged the second HDMI output into an HDMI to RCA audio converter instead? That will allow him to feed his TV as normal, still use the ARC to get surround sound, but then use the RCA audio to feed Zone 2? ? That does sound, well, yeah, that sounds like it'll work.
It would, but it's actually more than what you need to do. Because all you need to do, because right now, if you can send the video straight from the Apple TV 4K to the television, we know that works, right?
Can you send the audio directly from the 4K, the Apple TV to the receiver in a different input?
Not straight from the Apple TV 4K itself, because it only has an HDMI output.
Oh, okay.
But what you could do is just use an HDMI audio extractor, because that passes the video through, and then it just separates out the audio and sends it via optical, usually just optical. That's what it does.
So he's not using audio return channel at all.
Then he's not using audio return channel at all.
There you go. That works.
That is the thing to do. So you do need to make sure it is a 4K HDCP 2.2 audio extractor, but Sewell sells one. That's where I'd send you. So, there you go. HDMI audio extractor, and it should solve this issue. You might still have the issue where, if you're trying to watch a video that has surround sound and then try to send that to Zone 2, probably not going to work.
Yeah, you're just going to get the left and right channels, and you're not going to get the center, which is...
what it should do is automatically down mix everything in your living room to just 2 channels.
Right.
But he said he mostly wants it for when he's listening to music in both rooms, which will be coming out of the Apple TV 4K in stereo to begin with.
Yeah, you should be okay there.
Should be no problem. Yeah.
Heath has dual SVS SB4000 subwoofers. Those are the big boys, but in a small box. A couple of weeks after he got them, one of the amplifiers stopped working. It was just probably very scared of the driver. It just got afraid. He contacted SVS, and they promptly sent out a replacement amp. And about a month later, his other subwoofer's amp stopped working, and once again, SVS replaced it. Now, another month later, the first subwoofer's amp stopped working again. A third replacement amp installed. Then the second subwoofer's amp died for a second time. That's 4 amps in 3 months. And on top of that, he has a neighbor who bought dual PB16 Ultras, and one of his amps stopped working as well. Okay. Heath has his subs plugged directly into wall outlets, no surge protectors or power conditioners. They are on dedicated 20 amp circuits that he had installed specifically for these subs. He's used an outlet tester to make sure that every outlet on that circuit is wired properly. There are no other problems with any electrical equipment in his system or the rest of the house. He even had the power company check the inlet to his house, and so far, nobody can detect an issue. SVS customer service has been very good, but it's still a hassle and a worry to keep going through amplifiers like this. Yeah, one would think. And they're going to replace both subs entirely if another amp goes. Is there any chance something in his receiver is causing this? He wrote to Marantz, and they highly doubt it since the subwoofer outputs are such a low power signal. Any ideas at all about what could be causing his mini amp failures? Well, you tested like almost everything that came to my mind as I was reading this question, which is I thought it was the external power. You're having some sort of fluctuation, some sort of power surge, this sounds like an interaction between. Now, the one thing I'm wondering, and maybe SVS would have told you this by now anyways, is are the amps failing or are the amps fuses going? Because if the amps fuses are going, then that tells you that it's external and that the amp is protecting itself. But if there's something else happening, these are SB4000 subs, and I don't remember this dude having a super big room. I thought didn't we talk to him, and he bought these subs and we were like, you didn't need them? I feel like that.
I can't recall off the top of my head one way or the other on that front, but
The only thing that would come to my mind is you're overdriving them. But I doubt that would be the case.
I mean, even that. I mean, they're virtually rock solid. You turn them up as loud as they go, and they still won't break themselves. Yeah, no. I mean, this is now definitely. So if this happened once, I'd be like, bad luck.
Yeah.
If it happened twice, I'd be like, still
Super
just a
bad
coincidence.
luck. Yeah. Four times is ridiculous.
4 times in this amount of time. Yeah, that ain't right. I mean, it's great that SVS is sent out 4 replacement amps, and like if it happens again, we'll
replace the subs. If it happens
send
again,
in a whole darn new sub. But if it happens again, then it's like, well, it can't be SVS at that point. It's just so. I mean, I don't know. I absolutely do not. You said you had a 20 amp circuit installed. It from everything. It wasn't super explicit, but I think he has both subs plugged into that same circuit, which should be fine. That's not concerned, but I'm just like, could there have been something about that circuit that wasn't installed properly? That's like the only thing I can think about.
He said he had it tested.
I know. But those little wall testers, I mean, all they do is make sure that
it's a power company come out. He said,
well, but that was the external to his house. They didn't come inside his house. So, I mean, the main thing I'm suspecting is the 20 amp circuit that you had installed inside your house. I don't know what it would be, but I'm like, what other culprit is there? I mean, it can't be just the subwoofer output of his Marantz. No way. Wouldn't be doing this. So that's the only culprit I can think about, is that whatever your electrician did when he installed that 20 amp circuit, something went slightly awry.
Yeah, I guess that's about the only thing I can think to.
Yeah.
So test. I guess have a different electrician come out and test that circuit. That's literally the only part of this whole equation that doesn't make that seems like it might be at fault. The power from the outside coming in is the only way that I can think that this could be happening this many times.
Yeah.
So if the power outside your house is flowing without brownouts and surges and stuff like that, and the subwoofer itself we know is fine, and the Marantz isn't doing nothing, then it's got to be something between that, where the power is entering your house and entering the subwoofer, somewhere in that chain. So
and he said it was a dedicated 20 amp circuit that he had installed for the sub. So he's like, nothing else in my house is having this problem, but nothing else is plugged into that 20 amp circuit.
That's true.
So that's my suspect. I hate it because it might require opening up your darn walls, but I don't know what else to say. That's the only culprit I can
put a nail through the wire or something like that. I mean,
that's exactly it. You know, one staple through the thing could do this. It creates an arc, right? Pop. There goes whatever's plugged in. Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
What if it's as stupid as like they overdid one of the wall the wire inside is attached to the studs with staples. What went through it, or just too tight, creating an arc in there? God, I hate when that happens.
Travis uses a pair of Martin Logan Motion Series 35 XT bookshelf speakers along with his SVS PP12 NSD and a 2.1 setup. He sits about 8 feet away, but the room is open to his entire house, so it's 8 bajillion cubic feet. His source is an HTPC, and he's been using Toslink, or an optical cable, to connect it to his Pioneer VSX45TX receiver. Everything's been working fine, and he appreciates the low noise floor of his Pioneer, but he's been considering a receiver upgrade in order to get the best room correction that he can afford. He's hoping to spend as little as possible once an audible upgrade. Okay, so we got a picture here, and he's got his, and you know what? This looks nicer than I ever would have thought, but he's got his bookshelf speakers on cinder blocks, and they're standing end on end, and it looks like he's painted them white. Those might not be cinder blocks. They look a lot like cinder blocks.
I don't know if they are or if it's just shelving unit, but whatever it is, it's
looks like
not something that other people couldn't put together. This is something anybody could do.
He's also got the Oppo. He's got the same headphones I'm wearing right there.
There you go. Yeah.
So he wants to get an audible difference here. Okay. I don't know. We'll see.
It's kind of questionable.
I want to start off with that. I think the answer to your question is that it's probably not going to make an audible difference.
Yeah.
I believe the real solution to your dilemma of which receiver should you buy is none of the above. We will answer the rest of your questions.
Yes.
I am unconvinced that you're going to get Odyssey Multi-Q XC32 with sub EQ HT and go, wow. now I've
Yeah.
got good sounds. I
I
think
mean,
you're
like,
gonna,
the thing
you're gonna
is, if
plug
you,
it in and you're gonna go, wow, I just spent a lot of money. It sounds exactly the same.
I mean, if you use the Odyssey Editor app, I'm sure you could tweak the sound more than how you can tweak it right now, but you could do the same thing for $100 with a mini DSP, which that really has me, because I mean, he's only doing stereo, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could absolutely just plug a mini DSP in between your source and your receiver,
Sure.
and then off you go. You can tweak that thing to your heart's content, which will make more difference than the automatic EQ done by rim correction, or the same amount of difference as what an editor app could do.
That
in
is
a
the answer to your problem. If you want to tweak, if you want to start messing, do a mini DSP and use the receiver you already like.
Yes,
you
that's
don't
right.
need any more features.
Yeah,
Get a mini DSP.
I think so.
And the Cross Spectrums Labs.
Because what he's talking about is changing things with EQ, and that's what the mini DSP does all day long, is change things
I
with
want
EQ.
to just ignore the rest of these questions.
Well, I like answering some of these things about noise floor and that, because
right.
applies to
everybody. Should you be looking at the THD or the total harmonic distortion spec in order to determine the amp's noise floor? I mean, isn't it, no? Yes? Sometimes?
No, not usually that. So usually what you want to look
noise ratio.
Signal to noise ratio, yeah.
Supposed to be? Yeah.
Which a lot of receivers don't list. Separate amplifiers almost always do, but AV receivers often don't. But it's the signal to noise floor that you're looking for. Ideally, because usually they're rated at both 1 watt and then full rated power. Ideally, at full rated power, the signal to noise ratio would be 120 decibels or more, which is hard to find. I mean, even most of the Emotivas don't even hit that.
Right.
But essentially, that would be perfect. It would mean there's no noise for all intents and purposes. And at 1 watt, you're hoping to find 96 decibels signal to noise ratio. Again, that would essentially be perfect. It would be silent. Okay. But anything kind of around 90 and 110 or something like that is very good. Very, very good.
If you were to switch his audio output from Toslink, which is optical, to HDMI, would that potentially cause any issues in playing back his MKV movie backups? I can't imagine why, though. HDMI is HDMI. So
no, it really, really shouldn't. And he was having some concerns because he was reading some posts where somebody measured the HDMI output of their PC versus the Toslink output of their PC, and the HDMI output had more noise in it somehow, or had a higher noise floor.
I don't know about that, dude.
I questioned the testing methodology quite a bit.
I tested the sanity of anybody who would even think of testing that. To be honest with you, it's a digital cable. It doesn't have a noise.
Which
I don't know. How noisy are the electrons that are going through that?
If there's something wrong, it can.
Sure, but
noise can be carried by any electrical conductor between two objects. So
yeah, I could make noise with an HDMI cable. I just beat it on the wall. It makes all kinds of noise.
Right, but no. Honestly, the answer is no, and don't let that thing that you read get into your head too much. Because no, that was I questioned the methodology of that one. Yeah.
Lastly, he asked, while these are not electrostatic speakers, they are still rated at 4 ohms. Should that be a concern for him for whatever new AV receiver he buys? Okay, so 4 ohms is a harder to drive load, and I don't know what their minimum is. Sometimes they're like, I'm 4 ohm nominal, and then 1.2 ohm.
Like the Magnapans, yeah.
The Magnapans ones, you're like, okay, well, as long as we don't hit that frequency, we'll be fine. But if you hit that frequency, your amp's going to go into oscillation. Everything's shutting down. So I don't know what your speakers are, but 8 feet away, only 2 channels driven, I would not be super concerned, but I would not buy an entry-level receiver.
Yeah, I wouldn't get the cheapest of the cheap, but any of the ones that could use the Odyssey Editor app, I'd be fine with any of those. Or as we say, you already know your Pioneer works, so get a mini DSP.
Yeah. So the answer is get a mini DSP and don't worry about that.
And he's like, oh no, that'll be analog. But I'm like, yeah, but you're only 2 channels. You're fine.
You're fine.
And if you're super duper worried, then you get a little USB DAC. If the audio outputs of your PC are noisy, which can happen.
Yeah, sure.
You get a little USB DAC and you're done.
Monty's brother would like to get a good 4K TV at a budget price of about $600. He'd like something between 50 and 65 inches, and he'd like it to have HDR and Dolby Vision if possible. Suggestions? Isn't the TCL like one
the TCL
is the one that we would suggest for that? Does
Absolutely.
Vizio even do Dolby Vision yet?
Oh yeah, Vizio's done Dolby Vision from the beginning.
I think the budget pick is the TCL these days.
Oh yeah, for $600, it'd be the 55-inch model, but that is between 50 and 65 inches.
Sure is.
$600 from Best Buy. It's the Best Buy version, which has the slightly not as good, or not, but slightly different remote control that comes with it. That's the only difference. TVs are identical, the remotes are different. So Best Buy has the $600 TCL. It is the R615 from Best Buy. R615, 55-incher TCL, $600, all the things.
What would be our pick for a budget Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray player? Well, our pick would be the Sony X700 if they hadn't screwed it up so bad. Now, if they get around to pushing an update that fixes Dolby Vision, then I think it's going to go back to that. So as of this moment, what is our recommendation, Rob?
I'd have to say the LG and the new LG, not their original one, because that UP970... That is a cheap, flimsy piece of junk. So my parents are still using it, and it's working okay, but that I can't wholeheartedly. Their new one, which is the UBK90 that just came out, still not super impressive, but it is the budget Dolby Vision player pick, because at least it auto-senses when it's Dolby Vision, unlike the Sony. I don't know how Sony screwed that up. How do you screw that up?
We're going to get so many angry comments on YouTube in about a month.
Yeah, right. It works fine. What are you guys talking about? Yeah,
you guys talking about the Sony's the best player out there. You're idiots. Unsubscribe.
Right. Like, okay. But yeah, no, the LG UBK90, you're going to be super impressed by its 1989 menu that comes with it. Yeah.
Circa 1989, all the best white on black
It
text.
is just a big white background with like a Linux looking text on it. Super high end.
Everything in Courier new. Infinite Gary, he's got like a bajillion questions, so everybody settle in. Listening to music on his new pair of Dynaudio Focus 20XD, it just looks like somebody laughing, self-powered speakers. Gary has found that for some music, he's getting all the bass he would ever want just from the pair of speakers, but for other tracks, it seems like there's a bit of a low end missing. If we were to add a sub, is there a chance this could flip, where it fills in the missing bass, but then it would sound too bassy for the music that already sounds good? To sub or not to sub? The answer to that question is always to sub. And actually, yes, 2 subs, but to sub is yes. It will not. I can't imagine a world in which it would do the bass worse than what your speakers are doing, though if in very non-optimal placement, it could theoretically sound worse.
Sure. Yeah, if you created a big hump at something that plays often in music, like
right,
45 hertz or something.
What he's describing here is a null. A null in something that the speakers are doing well, and a bump in something the speakers aren't doing at all. Suddenly he would have bass and a lot of it way down low, but he's got
one listening position, and this is his room, so you can do the bass, you can do the subwoofer crawl.
Based on his spending habits, we know he's got plenty of room to move things around.
Yeah.
The X20XD speakers say they have an active crossover, but they don't have a subwoofer output. So how would he blend it in a sub? The whole idea is to feed these self-powered speakers a direct signal from the player, no preamp needed. So how would he even get a signal to feed a sub? And then how would he keep the whole thing digital?
This is a challenge, a big challenge.
This is like a breakout box, I guess. I mean, it's the only way I can think to do it other than buying a receiver.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of want to get like the absolute cheapest AV receiver.
Yeah.
Although you still have to have stereo outputs somehow to get to the speakers because they don't have speaker wire inputs.
Yeah, so you have to have pre-outs.
I mean, I guess maybe you get one of the Marantz slim lines.
That's the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah, you do kind of need a preamp here to do this properly. You actually kind of do, because otherwise you have no crossover. You just have the speakers playing as low as they can, and then you have the low pass filter on the subwoofer, but you have no actual crossover if you don't have some sort of preamp. So you kind of do, and you need one that has an actual crossover, and then it has to have analog so it would actually be analog outputs going to the speakers. So kind of a lot of things he doesn't really want to do, unfortunately. But to properly integrate a subwoofer with a pair of speakers, you need a crossover.
A pair of self-powered speakers in this case doesn't help you, because you can't. The amplifier is in there, not without them accepting something other than a digital signal.
You could do this with a mini DSP. You for sure could. But then you would want to send analog out of your CD player to begin with, which should be no problem.
Right.
Any CD player will have analog out. So you could do this with a mini DSP. That can be your crossover. And then it can feed its RCA outputs into the inputs of the self-powered speakers and an RCA output to the subwoofer.
But it's no longer digital. But
it won't be digital, but that avoids having a whole preamp, because like a Marantz Slimline would be more expensive than a mini DSP.
Yeah, mini DSP is only like $100, right?
Yeah. So yeah, mini DSP would be the way to do this.
And
then
don't
you
be
just
afraid
send analog out of your CD player.
Yeah, don't be afraid of analog. It's not like you're going to lose anything.
Nah.
It's got to have the full bandwidth, the full everything in there. So the X20, I'm never going to get this right. The 20 XD speakers have LEDs on the front to indicate the volume level. The manual explains them as follows. There are 34 actual volume steps with 2 dB between each step. The first step is mute. Except for the top and bottom one, each LED corresponds to 4 actual steps, amounting to 8 dB per additional LED, assuming you are comparing the same step within each LED. There is no visual indication of which actual volume step is selected of the 4 within each LED light. Huh? Can we translate that in normal English, please? Yeah.
That is like LED... needlessly
yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, basically, you're going to turn the volume knob, and it's not going to, you're going to turn it like one step, and your LED, a new LED will illuminate. Then you'll turn it again, and then you'll turn it again, and then you'll turn it again, and then the next LED will illuminate, basically, if I'm reading this right.
Yeah, well, four steps. So you have your
steps.
remote, because it has a remote. So you go volume up once, nothing happens. Volume up twice, nothing happens. Volume up 3 times, nothing happens. Volume up 4 times, and the next little LED comes on.
Right.
There. That's
what it means. It means that they wouldn't want to put 34.
They didn't want to put 34
LEDs across the front of this thing and have you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why they put a number up there, a little display? I don't know. Because they thought that this was cooler.
I guess
Gary is keeping his Oppo player in his TV room, so he needs a new CD player for his Dynaudio speakers. He's thinking about a high-end Marantz HD CD1. Worth it? Better to go with something else? It's a CD player.
Uh-huh.
Go with the cheapest one you can find. I mean, it's just not...
I mean, it would be nice if the transport itself wasn't like super, because some of the really cheap ones you can hear the disc spinning.
Yeah, that's
like crazy.
True. And if you are going to go analog out, you do want decent DACs in there. I wouldn't worry that much about the DACs. I'd worry about the noise of the actual physical player itself.
But remember when he was like, with the Oppo, I'd be able to play concert Blu-rays?
Yeah.
Video, which you couldn't do with just a CD player. So I'm like, get a Sony X800.
Sure.
Then you can play any type of disc, and it has nice build quality.
There you go. If you want to reduce some room reflections, but only want to add a minimal amount of absorption, where's the best? Oh, how many times do we have to answer this question? I swear, I feel like we've answered every podcast the last couple of months.
Yeah, but this is
where's the best place to put that absorption? Couple panels on the front wall behind the speakers, go for a plush rug on the floor, or a couple of panels on the back wall behind the listening position, side wall ceiling.
So imagine you're only going to do one of these. You're only going to do one wall or the floor. Where do we go?
Yeah, I'd probably go either behind my head or the floor, but probably the floor.
Yep.
Probably
I agree. Because you can cover the most surface area on the floor without it looking weird at all. Because you're like, there's a big old rug.
But you get the least amount of absorption, really. I mean, as far as base, you get not okay.
When you have a bare floor, when you just have a bare floor, man, a room sounds echoey with a bare floor.
Yeah, I think
And then barring that, I do the wall that's behind me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I do the first reflection points.
Then I do the side walls. That's right.
And then I do the behind ceiling, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah.
Gary has accumulated quite a few large boxes and shipping containers. He felt like his basement was starting to look like a warehouse. How do we manage our shipping boxes? I throw them away.
Do you?
Yeah, dude. I'm bad.
I fold mine up and put them in the locker in the garage, my locked garage in the basement of my apartment building. I collapse the boxes and I stick them in my locker.
Yeah, it's styrofoam is a problem.
Right. I do usually get rid of that.
Yeah, which, defeats the whole purpose. I figure if somebody wants something back from me, that unless I'm planning on giving it back, in which case I just store it in the garage like you do.
Sure.
If I buy something, that box is getting tossed. Long ago. Now, when I lived in Jacksonville, I had a large shelving unit that was built by a friend of mine. Like the whole wall was shelves top to bottom, and I had that thing filled with boxes. I do still have a closet outside of my garage. I forgot about this, full of boxes, but most of those boxes have equipment in them, that I'm not using. So it's got there's a couple. I don't know what's out there. I can't remember. Anyways, that's out there. But yeah, just garage, and then I get rid of most of it. How much time we have left? Wow, we're just getting
about half an hour.
Yeah, not about. Yeah. Mark is moving in 3 to 4 months. Is it too early to be receiver shopping? Yes. Next question. The one thing I'm going to say is that if you can find an X4300 and that's on your menu of things, I would not buy anything right now that you can buy in 3 to 4 months. Which means if I were to buy a receiver right now, it would be because those things are going out of stock and I need to get it before they're gone. Okay. So, yeah, I am not a proponent of buying things early. I don't like that.
Yeah, they do sometimes tend to sit and sit.
Yeah. He has a 5.1 speaker set up. His front 3 speakers are 4 ohm and rated for 300 watts of continuous power handling, which means nothing. The surround speakers are 8 ohms with 200 watts of power handling. Again, doesn't matter. Should he get a separate 3-channel amp to power his front 3 4 ohm speakers? Where are you moving? How far away from your speakers are you sitting? And how
big is your room? A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit matters. Not too much for speakers, but a little bit.
Yeah. So do you know the answers to any of those questions? Because if you do not,
I do not.
Then, well, I'm asking Mark. Do you know how far away you're going to be sitting from your speakers? The size of the room that they'll be in. Do you know any of those things? Because if you don't know any of those things, then the answer is we don't know. You need to tell us that.
When your front 3 speakers are 4 ohm rated, it gets me into the maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I would say that there's a possibility. It's not a no. Like if you say that my speakers are, 87 dB sensitive 8 ohm speakers, and I'm going to be moving to a new house, do you think I'll need an amp? My answer is probably not.
Right.
4 ohm speakers, maybe.
Maybe. Yep. Definitely not out of the question.
Speakers. He told them how much power they can handle, which doesn't really tell us anything. So 4 ohm speakers that are 107 dB sensitive, I'm like, probably not, but maybe. So what receiver should he get? None. Should he consider a model that can expand to 7.2.4 in the future? Are you thinking of going to 7.2.4 in the future?
That's right. If you are, definitely consider it. Yeah.
I would consider that. Are you considering, is the room you're in a 12 by 12 bedroom? In which case, no, you don't need, because you're probably never going to get to 7.2.4, at least not reasonably. I can't answer these questions. So
right. If you wanted my top value choice that has all the super high end features, including full set of pre-outs, if you do want to do that, if you can find an X3300W because you're sure you're never going to use more than 7 speakers, then that's a great option. Right. If you can find an X4300H, and because you might go to 7.2.4 or 5.2.4. Then that's a great one. Those would be the models I would consider pouncing on right now because they are disappearing completely. Right. Accessories for Less hasn't had any for a couple of weeks of either of those models. So if you can find those at a really good price, then that's a maybe. Otherwise, I just wait until you know what you actually have.
Yeah.
What is your house? What is your setup? How far away are you? All that stuff. And then we'll decide because the 4400H is still going to be here in a number of months and probably at a cheaper price than it is right now.
I would wait. Yeah. Tim's new house is under construction. It's scheduled to be completed in November. He will eventually finish a room in the basement as a large dedicated home theater, but for the next couple of years, the basement will remain unfinished. I feel like you should maybe push up your timetable, but okay.
Money, dude. Money.
I know, that's true. But just do a little bit
when
of
you've
time.
Just bought a new house and your mortgage is at its highest point and your payments are like almost interest only. God, that's a terrible time.
It is. The living room is wide open, so other than the TV over the fireplace, he does not plan on using the living room as primary movie and TV viewing area. Instead, there is a 15 by 17-foot bonus room that he intends to use as his theater until he is able to finish the basement. But the bonus room is also open on one side. Plus, it shares a wall with his 5-year-old son's bedroom, so he's trying to decide what to do. Okay, before we go any further, what is the dimensions of the room you're planning on finishing in this basement? Because if we are going to recommend stuff that you are planning on moving down there, then that is different stuff than the stuff that we are going to recommend for a 15 by 17-foot bonus room. But
open. So as far as we're concerned, right now he has infinity cubic feet.
That's true. So the subwoofer situation, it will be... I mean, we are not going to try to fill this house full of bass.
No.
That's never going to happen. No. But we would like to recommend you subs that would be applicable for your space downstairs. Yes. Not only that, 15 by 7 ain't that big, Hoss. And you could go with like some birds, Focal bird speakers, which would be just fine in that space to do your surround duty and maybe even your fronts if you really wanted them to. But if you're going to be downstairs in a 22 by 30 foot room, suddenly that's no longer a very viable option. Yeah. So, first of all, what is your home theater going to look like? Are you going to buy a whole new gear, or is this gear going to go down there? And what's the what kind of stuff are you looking for that room? And there's going to be some crossover here? Because if there's going to be some crossover, we have to know.
But let's focus on the current setup.
Yeah, we can still. All right, so the room is going to be displayed on our YouTube video, but I'll give you an idea here. He is going to put the TV on the 17-foot wall. His son's room will be on the other side of the 17-foot wall, according to this current dimension. There are windows on the right wall, and there's steps down to the second floor on the left wall, so it's upstairs thing. Yeah. And the couch will be on the back wall, like it looks like it's right on the back wall. And there's an open railing and all this other stuff. So there you go. So what's the best orientation for a setup? His initial idea is to have the 65-inch TV and front speakers on the 17-foot wall with his son's room on the other side. He figured that way, most of the sound is being directed away from his son's room rather than toward it. His couch could go on the opposite wall. I don't think that's how that works. That the sound going away is in no way going to make it less loud in your son's room. Now, I honestly don't think it's going to make a huge difference for your son's room.
It's not going to be a huge difference, but no source of sound tends, whatever the source of the sound, get the source of the sound away from the son's room.
You actually want to flip this 180 degrees. You want to put the TV on,
which is entirely doable.
Well, yeah, sure. There's no reason why you can't do that. You want to put the speakers away from your son, the ones that are going to be making the most noise. Now, the surround speakers are still going to be close to your son's one, but they don't make as much noise and they're not as loud, and they're a lot closer to your face. So their trim levels will be down as well. So, yeah, you want to flip this room 180 degrees. He already knows that he wants to watch TV, use a TV stand and leave some room between the wall and the back of the stand to provide access to wires and whatnot. He figures his surround speakers will go on stands on either side of his couch. Would having the couch just 1 foot off the back wall be enough? Would that be sufficient so that his surround speakers are not right up against the back wall? Yeah, I mean, you could put, yeah. That's perfectly...
I prefer 1 foot to 0 feet for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you don't actually have to. I mean, if you put the surround speakers right next to the back wall, which you're saying you don't want to do, but if you did and you sat on your couch and your couch was right on the back wall, your head would still be in line with those speakers.
True.
So you would actually be a little bit, depending on the depth of your couch. My couch, you would definitely be in front of those speakers. So I pull it off the wall, yes, and then put the surround speakers, flanking your couch, yes.
Yep. I mean, what a lot of people have in a living room setup is like one of those, fairly high tables that goes behind your couch. Yeah. So you can have stuff behind that. So I would maybe consider having one of those behind your couch and then the couch in front of that. That'll probably give you about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet off the wall. And nobody is going to look at that and go, why is your couch so far away from the wall, when you have one of those behind the couch tables back there with, I don't know, some pictures or plant or whatever on there. That looks very normal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's fine. And then you don't have a ton of room in here, so you're on the 15-foot wall. So you're in the 15-foot distance. So the TV is going to be out into the room. The speaker is going to be out into the room a little bit. So you're going to be sitting somewhere around 15 feet. You're going to be sitting somewhere around probably 12 to 13 feet away from these speakers anyways. I mean, that's like maximum.
Yeah, max. Yeah, it
You
could be
know,
more like 11 feet. It could
yeah.
be very, very possible in here. I think
So
that's very reasonable.
just basically placing things on the wall or near in the room the way that seems normal and
Hmm.
natural is about fine. It's about what
Yeah.
you can do. So he says, would placing absorption panels on the front wall behind his front speakers help reduce the sound transmission to his son's room? The answer is no.
No, they won't do anything about sound transmission. However, I would still have you. So, since we're suggesting that you flip your orientation 180 degrees from what's in the diagram, so that your couch is sharing the wall with your son's room and then the TV's on the far wall, I would put some absorption behind your couch for you. It won't do anything for your son, but for you, so that dialogue sounds better, I'd have some panels behind my couch. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. And we're going to talk about this in a second. Let me keep going here. So he has 20-year-old Klipsch speakers. Wow. A pair of bookshelves and a center up front. All 5 of his speakers are still in good shape, and he likes how they sound. However, his old subwoofer died. That's fine. With this bonus room being open, with one side of this bonus room being open, he won't be able to pressurize the space. And he figures he'll probably have to turn the subwoofer way down or off after his son goes to sleep. And no, he can't move his son's bedroom. He says, don't ask why.
All right.
Why? Why can't you move your son's bed? I gotta know now.
Now Tom really
Now
wants to
I really
know.
gotta know.
Just because he's not allowed
why?
to.
Well, it's just not allowed. He's upstairs. A lot of people are like, I don't want to put my son's upstairs. I hate it on the HGTV when people are like, well, you have a young one, so we don't want a house with stairs. Your son's never going to learn how to climb stairs?
Nope.
He's stupid.
He's this age forever.
We don't want him to get hurt on the stairs. Yeah. Stair-related deaths. Such a problem in this country. Anyways, so his son has been ostracized to this front. So would SVS SB1000 be sufficient for his purposes, or should you consider replacing his front speakers with towers and forego the subwoofer altogether? Don't do that.
Don't do that. Nope.
Should he just play with what he wants? Just play with what he wants to potentially keep his 5-year-old son awake until he is ready to call it at night. Let me tell you something about your 5-year-old son. He's not the one you got to worry about. That dude's going to sleep, and you ain't waking him up. My kids won't wake up for nothing. They'll fall asleep in this room, and I will be reference level in here, and they'll be like, out. They don't wake up for nothing. Your 5-year-old son, I mean, maybe he's different than my kids are. And I've got 3 boys, so I mean, an N of 3 is not a huge sample size, but those kids don't wake up. And as they get older into high school, they're dead. They're like, you check their pulse. You're like beating them with a stick. Get up, boy. Time for school. You know, yeah, you got to worry about your wife.
More like your wife worrying that you're going to wake up your son. Yeah.
That's what you got to worry about. You got to worry about wake up your wife, or your wife worrying that you're going to wake little Tommy up. No, you're not. Little Tommy ain't waking up for nothing. You be fine. Okay, I'm not going to give you a recommendation on a sub because I think your sub is going to end up downstairs, and I need to know what downstairs looks like. So SB1000, is it sufficient for your purposes? Are you going to put it right next to your couch? In which case, maybe. But I mean, if you're really worried about bass and everything else, you could get a tactile transducer for the couch. I don't like them, but some people do. I say just don't worry about your son because it's not going to be a consideration.
I mean, if I were just buying a sub for this space that I'd be very comfortable with, no, it's not going to pressurize your whole house. But if I were, I would lean towards like an SB2000. To me, that's like it's absolutely going to work. I have no worries about it.
Cylinder sub. I get the cylinder 2000.
Sure, yeah, or the cylinder. But I'd go for a 2000 series in this space. That's what I would do. Yeah. But we don't know what your downstairs is going to be. It's very likely that a pair of PC 2000s, even in what you might consider a large dedicated theater, that's going to be fully enclosed. So PC 2000s, a pair of those are probably going to work in your theater pretty well. Although, who knows? Maybe he's going to have a gigantic dedicated theater
or
down
maybe
there.
it's going to be itty bitty. Who knows?
Then 2000s would be fine. But I'd go that way. If you're just like, I need to buy a sub, I'd go, a 2000 series. That's what I'd get.
I really don't see any reason to switch your speakers.
No.
I mean, they're fine. And I'd much rather you choose speakers when you're designing your home theater. When your home theater comes together, you're like, I want all in walls, or I want all on walls, or I want freestanding, or I want this, or I want, then we can start talking about speakers. But I see no reason to switch your speakers. Now, all this being said, it could be that he has this configuration this way because the wall behind the couch, the way he has it set up right now, is slanted. Bonus rooms often don't have flat walls. So let's flip the room back the way he initially had it with the TV and his speakers and everything on his son's wall. Mm-hmm. Do any of our recommendations change? I'm going to say no.
Nope.
I don't think that putting any extra absorption on that front wall, though, putting absorption on that front wall is not a bad idea. It's not going to really help for sound transmission into your son's room, but all of our recommendations stay basically the same.
Yep.
I still think that, I mean, if I were you, I'd probably not put the subwoofer on your son's wall. I'd probably put it near those windows.
On the opposite side.
On the opposite side from your son's. It's probably where I would end up putting the sub. I'd tuck it back.
Probably where it fits most reasonably anyway. So
yeah. So that's it.
Okay.
All right, Josh. Josh asked, what would we consider the perfect shape and size for a home theater room? Is there an actual physics-based rationale for our answer? Well, the long-held golden ratio is 1 to 1.14 to 1.39.
Okay.
That's the ratio that will give you the fewest modal problems with sound bouncing around your room. So if you have a perfect rectangle, then you want whatever the height is, usually 8 feet.
Yeah.
1.14 is the short wall.
That's only 9 feet. Well, 9.12 feet, a little over 9 feet.
And then, well, I was going to say it's a 10-foot high ceiling, right? So it's 10 feet by 11.4 feet by 13.9 feet.
Okay.
Is the golden ratio. The reason this is because what this does is gives you the fewest amount of sound interaction so that you get those peaks that we talk about and the nulls that we talk about. It makes your room easier to acoustically fix.
Mm-hmm.
That being said,
you're talking about a rectangle, right? He's always the shape. So
yeah,
rectangle.
That's the shape. Yeah, it's always a rectangle. Because any other shape is so hard to predict that no one does it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The physics-based rationale for having the room be a rectangle is simply so we can predict what the heck is going to happen in here. So, I mean, I know you go to some, very fancy concert places and they got all kinds of crazy shapes, right? Lots of curves, and there's that place that, like, the whole thing was based on seashells and, like, all kinds of nutty stuff. But for a home theater, so for a home theater, right? So I'm like, it's going in a house.
Yeah.
Any contractor can build you a rectangle. If they can't build you a rectangle, don't hire that contractor. There's something seriously wrong at that point.
If you try to describe what you want, they're like, a what? You just say, I'm sorry, sir.
You want right angles and straight lines? What? We can't do that.
Yeah, so those concerts and stuff, those concert venues that he was talking about, these concert halls, those things are designed, initially they were designed by artists and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Nowadays, there's a lot of, like, predictive modeling that goes into these things.
Sometimes I look at it, I'm like, that's not about the acoustics. That was about the look.
There's a lot about the looks. At the same time, they should be doing that. But that is the golden ratio. Now, that being said, these days, with what we know about subwoofers and other things, a rectangle with reasonably similar to those dimensions is good enough.
I mean, generally, yeah, if you can just have it so that none of the dimensions are exactly the same, meaning it's not a square or a cube.
Or divide evenly into each other, or have some common denominator.
Yeah, so don't have it be 12 feet wide and 24 feet long, because then you'll have a lot of double ups. So the way to have mathematically the fewest possible doublings or triplings of anything is to make all of the dimensions prime numbers.
Sure. So 7
have
by 11 by...
So have it 11 feet tall. I mean, taller is great for acoustics.
Yeah.
So if you can have it be 11 feet tall, 17 feet wide, and 23 or 29 feet long, to me, that's a super nice theater.
That's a big room. That's a real big room.
Yeah, no, but what's perfect, right? So I'm like, perfect. I want 2 rows in my perfect home theater.
Yeah, sure.
If for no other reason than now I don't have to have multiple screen sizes. If I want my HD TV to look smaller than my movies, I can just go sit in the second row now. Much easier.
So weird.
You don't like the multiple screen sizes. Lots of people like the multiple screen sizes, Tom.
I think every single one of you guys is weird.
I like the multiple screen sizes, but there, 2 rows of seats.
Think of a reason why I want my screen to look smaller. There's never been a logical explanation for why it's supposed to be smaller. I don't care. It can be bigger. I want it bigger. I don't understand why you would volunteer to have your screens. Okay,
but you can use the online room mode calculator.
Yeah,
that'll help you out. And they give a description. They have lots of little things down below with measurements and that, and they give you a description of what these things are and the rationale behind why you want the numbers that you want. And so yeah, that's a great place. The online room mode calculator. And if you plug in 11 by 17 by 23, oh man, do all the numbers look nice. So it all works out. That's what if I'm building from scratch, that's what I'm building.
Okay. Earl. Earl has a processor with LSC Multi-Q XT32 and dual SVS SB16 Ultra subwoofers. Would it be advisable to try using a mini DSP in addition to what he already has? Why do you want to use it?
This is more questionable because the SB16 Ultras actually do have EQ of their own that you can use. I think it's only 3 bands, but it's there. So even if you want to get into the unique EQ for each sub, you can do that without a mini DSP, not as much.
It's a lot more clunky too because you have to go into SVS and put those values in yourself. Whereas mini DSP, the Room EQ wizard can just export a file for you.
That's right. But you can still do it. So yeah. Although,
I mean, okay, is it advisable to try using one? I mean, I wouldn't do it.
So I would say,
what's wrong with your room? You've got dual SVS SB16 Ultra subwoofers. You have them optimally placed. Is your room in a rectangle? Are you having uneven bass? What's the problem that you're trying to fix? I mean, are you just trying to play?
People just want better, man. They're like, I got this. Oh man, it's so now I just want it even better.
Okay. No. So if you were to add a mini DSP to set up, how would the signal chain work? Would you run Odyssey first and then measure and apply more filters manually using the mini DSP? If it were me, I would try to get the mini DSP to make it sound as good as I could before I ran Odyssey.
That is right. Yeah, because
I would play around with the mic and the different measurements, and then have Room EQ Wizard spit out the best thing it can do. Have that dump into the mini DSP, then run Odyssey, and then Bob's your uncle. Yeah,
what I would do here is I'm going to use the mini DSP, and I'm going to, even though you only have 2 subs, I'm still going to use the multi-sub optimizer software because that works hand in hand with Room EQ Wizard. And I'm going to use all that to get my bass as uniform as it can possibly be across all of my seats. Then I'm going to have I'm going to tell my processor with Multi-Q XT32 that I only have 1 sub. And I'm going to send that 1 output from the processor into the mini DSP, knowing that the mini DSP has taken care of making my dual subwoofers as uniform as they can possibly be. Then run Odyssey as though you only have 1 sub, because now that is your global EQ. We already know it's uniform, so whatever it does now will apply to all of your seats. So that's the signal chain.
He'd start by using a 2 in 4 out mini DSP only for his subs, but in the future, could he use a mini DSP to measure and EQ all of his speakers? You absolutely can, as long as you use an external amp for all of your speakers, because it needs to go between your receiver and your amp.
Yeah, you have to have the signal come out of your processor, go into the mini DSP, and then out to your amplifiers, yeah.
His processor has XLR outputs, which he uses to connect to his amplifier. So he does have external amplifiers.
That's right.
Should he get the balanced version of the mini DSP, or would the RCA version be fine, or just for just the subs? Well, if he has XLR processor. Wait.
I mean, for the subs, the RCA version would be just fine.
Yeah. But for your
would the balanced version, because the SVS subs do have XLR inputs as well. So either for the subs is perfectly fine.
But for the speakers, you'd want to use the balanced one.
Yeah, for the speakers, get the balanced one, yeah.
Which software would be best to use? Room EQ Wizard? Yes. Or should he get the mini DSP models that include DRAC? Or is it just that DRAC is more automated? DRAC is more automated. So
it is.
I mean, I guess.
Well, how manual do you want to be?
I guess really that's what I'm thinking too, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting saying I want to sit here and tweak it, then you want Room EQ Wizard. But if you
and the multi-sub room optimization software, yeah.
If you just want the things to be a little bit better, then you could do DRAC. But it seems to me that if you're doing DRAC, why are you doing all this?
Yeah, I mean, DRAC is like a little bit more than Odyssey,
right?
So it's a change, whereas doing it all manually is like, I did this all myself.
I'll be dead honest with you. Without you telling us what the issue is here that you're trying to fix, I
don't think there is one. This is just like, can I do even more?
If you're looking to do even more than Room EQ Wizard, but I am going to tell you that, in my opinion, at the end of all of this spending, all this time you're going to spend, you're going to, at best, think you hear a difference that really isn't there. I think that's where you're going to end up, in a situation where you're like sitting there explaining to your wife why it's different, and she's going, yeah, but it kind of sounds the same as it did before. And you'd be like, no, but the bass is so much this and that. And she's gonna be like, uh-huh, mm-hmm. But it kind of sounds exactly the same as it did before. I think that's where you're going to end up. But that being said, it's fun. And then who am I to stop you from having your fun?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. All right, we're going to stop here so that we can do our outro before.
Okay.
I have to literally run out of this house and go get my.
Okay, so I'll just say that we have Nick and McMansion Chris on our list for next week.
All right, guys. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater AV questions. Please send your questions to question@avrant.com. If you'd like to win the Insteon Hub thingy, please send an email to tom@avrant.com explaining why. I want to say that I will not accept answers like because I really want it, but I probably would. So we'll see.
That's a reason.
That's a reason. I would like a little
I
bit
am
more
curious
than that.
about it. That's a reason.
I would like a little bit more than that. But, hey, send an email to tom@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Josh for his donation at www.avrant.com/buy us a cup of coffee or whatever. Click on the buy us a cup of coffee link. So,
yeah, Josh, thank you very much for the donation.
Thanks also to our 61 patrons over at Patreon.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. And thank you to our 61 patrons.
Well, I also want to thank all the people that helped us fight the hackers, the Russian hackers back. I want to thank Josh for spreading the gospel of AV Rant all over Reddit, our RA, Josh RRA, yes. And Chris for the Insteon Hub giveaway, which is now officially a thing.
Yeah, thank you, Josh and Chris, and everyone who alerted us. We appreciate it. We got the website fixed.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.